Ah, yes, the monkeys. We know when we roll that one out that it's going to be a good podcast. Daydream Believer there for you, and welcome to the JackCast. What should be an exciting and very, very upbeat JackCast. I'm Matt Barocco, and I'm joined by Stephen Carroll and Guto Llewellyn. Evening both.
Good
Even.
evening.
Oh, it's a Derby day result. It's a Derby win for the Swans. It's the big one. Steve, it was something we were looking forward to. We were nervous. We were excited. You and Gitto previewed it last week, and I can only imagine the nerves that you were thinking about as you were talking about it, but also, coming into the game as well. You don't sleep the night before. You feel sick. All of a sudden, you're not hungry. Everything goes. And in the end, what turned out to be an absolute dream of a game and a result for Swans, who absolutely dominated from start to finish.
Yeah, I mean, it's probably one of the most enjoyable derby days we've had because there were just so few moments that were concerning, really. I mean, obviously, we've gone in front early on and it's so comfortable. Then we've got a second after the red card when Cardiff got 10 men. It was just so simple. You can't ask for a more straightforward derby day. Really, we've got to enjoy it because surely you're not going to get one as stress free as that. I mean, they tend to be tight games, don't they? Or the other time where we won by more than one, we won 3-0. I think all the goals were in the second half, and the second two were, I think, after the 75th minute. But it was just so comfortable, wasn't it? So enjoyable, and the only regret is that we weren't there to see it because that would really have been one of the great away days that would have been talked about for years to come.
Yeah, definitely. And I felt, Gitto, that there were plenty more goals there for us if we wanted or needed to get them. It was one of those games, really, we had complete control over. Almost felt nervous to say it during the first half. And even the commentators mentioned that maybe Swansea should have got 2 or 3 in that first half because surely Cardiff aren't going to be as bad in the second half. But they were worse, if anything. The reaction never came from Neil Harris's men, who were resoundingly beaten, absolutely embarrassed all over the park, 1-11. Not a single position did they have the Swans players' number all game. It was men against boys.
How many times have we seen this where one of the teams, the Swans, has turned up and put in a proper Derby Day performance, the kind of performance you want to see from your team on that kind of occasion, and Cardiff just simply have not, and they've just not shown up at all. It happened in the first Derby last season, and it's happened in the first Derby this season as well. And I was amazed. I mean, they'd won their 4 games running up to this game, remember? So you're thinking, well, they're going to be confident. They're going to be, up for this, and they're going to give us a tough match, etc. And it just never came. I mean, we got the early goal, which was scrappy and poor from Cardiff's point of view. There's no doubt about that. But it just set the tone, really. But even before that, I mean, the Swans had really approached that game looking more switched on. We were keeping the ball. We were camped out in their half. They weren't really getting anywhere near us. And with our first real chance, we've Connor Roberts has beaten Joe Bennett for a header at the back post. How often does he win those headers? And the ball just bounces through to Lowe, who's quicker to latch onto it than anybody else. And despite firing it straight at the keeper, it creeps into the back of the net. And that kind of attitude from Cardiff typified their attitude all day, really. They just weren't at the races. The energy wasn't there. They weren't switched on mentally. And you're right, first half, I mean, the Swans didn't really create too many other chances in that first half, apart from when Grimes hit the post. There weren't too many other real clear-cut opportunities. But it looked comfortable. I think we were thinking, okay, let's not take any risks. But at the same time, there was one moment, really, where Cardiff did look dangerous, and that was when Kiefer Moore got a shot away off on the edge of the area after that foul in the build-up by Ryan Bennett, the minor moment of controversy in the game. That was the only time they posed any kind of danger, really. And I mean, we spoke about beforehand, boys, the fact that before the half was up, after about half an hour, really, I think, that they were taking long throws from just inside basically halfway inside the Swans half, long throws towards the box. And I was watching thinking, you cannot possibly be this desperate already, because the throws were so far out. There was no way that they were going to amount to anything. You could have the best long thrower in the world, and you'd struggle to create. You could have Rory Delap taking those throws, and he would have struggled to create anything from that kind of distance. But that's what Cardiff were doing, because that's all they had to offer by that stage. They'd run out of ideas at a preposterously early stage in the game, and just looked desperate. And we got to halftime and thought, well, that was easy, but surely in the second half, it's not going to be this easy, because Cardiff have to up their game. And I'm not sure they did, really. Even before they went down to 10 men, I didn't really feel like we were ever stretched under any kind of threat, really. The word is easy. It was easy.
I got to be honest, Steve. As we mentioned already, there were moments in that first half where you just thought, right, okay, well, maybe we aren't turning the screw enough. As Guto said, really, it was there weren't too many clear-cut chances. Grimes was very unlucky with a shot. The keeper tipped onto the post, which on another day is an absolute screamer, almost Leon Britton playoff semi-final-esque, that I felt, coming in off that side as well. But it really was one of those halves where you thought, we've camped in their half, as Guto said. We've got nothing to fear from them. They've offered very little. Neil Harris is clearly tactically inept, because despite seeing what everyone was seeing, he looked completely clueless as to how to change it to get the better out of their players. Their main man, Harry Wilson, was completely anonymous. They should have played him, really. Well, apparently he did play, but you would be surprised to know that, I suppose. But completely anonymous. And this was their major threat. And I think I look at them with Kiefer Moore as well, who went off with a hamstring in the second half, but minus that one glance at goal, which he blocked out for a corner, well, as it got pulled back for a free kick in the end. But completely anonymous, completely one-dimensional, Steve. There was nothing about them. The throw-ins that were just inside the Swans' half, they have never been renowned, really, in our generation for playing good football. Cardiff, they're Route One. We call them hoofball merchants. They don't. The antithesis of the Swansea way, really, aren't they? They like to play the percentages game, put it in the air, see if they can get a flick on and a bounce, and something falls their way, and poke it in the back of the net. And that's obviously had some success with them previously. I mean, they haven't been like kicking around the doldrums with it, but it's not entertaining. It's really, really poor to watch. It's 1980s football, not 2020 football. But even watching that game, watching Beauty versus the Beast, if you like, you could see the Swans were just there, and it wasn't even as if there was a threat of Cardiff on the break. They were clueless. They had nothing offered, and yet I felt at halftime, Steve, well, maybe we weren't going for enough. Maybe we should have perhaps put one or two more on them. It was the last couple of minutes of the first half where we were happy to play for throw-ins and keep it in the corner. And I was thinking, maybe just stick it in the box. They've got nothing going forward, and you could get a second goal, but in the end, the first half seemed to be camped about 70% in the Cardiff half, and following that goal, which Guto has already analysed, it really was a very, very strong Swansea City first half display.
Yeah, it was. As you say, there would be that one criticism. We didn't create a lot. I mean, the Grimes shot was unbelievable, really. I mean, I don't know where he's been hiding that in his locker, but we need to see more of it. It was from a crazy angle. I mean, you compare it to the Lyon one in the playoff semi-final, but it was a better hit than that, really. It seemed to be more powerful. The angle was extreme. I mean, it was right out on the corner. I mean, it wasn't as far out as like the 18-yard line, and it was further back, further towards the goal than the 18-yard line itself on the side. So, yeah, to even shoot from there really was crazy, I would say. But he wasn't far off scoring, was he? I mean, you do always worry sometimes, don't you? I mean, because we had dominated the half, we were only 1-0 up. You're thinking, well, are they going to change things second half because they can't play any worse, kind of thing? And I think in a derby, let's be honest, it's very difficult to to relax anyway. You're always going to, well, certainly in my case, I'm always fearing that things could change quickly because derby games in general can be quite unpredictable. But yeah, we arguably, you could say we should have created a little bit more, but the fact is we'd have all been delighted with 1-0 at half time and before the ball was kicked, and the way that we played, and the fact that Cardiff hadn't really, threatened us at all. But yeah, with hindsight, I suppose if we'd lost, we probably would have been saying then, well, we should have made it count more in the first half when we were on top. But of course, it doesn't matter now anyway, does it?
No, it doesn't. And as you say, we went in at half time and you're thinking, right, okay, well, we'll need a second goal. It is a derby. You can't just rely on the one. And, well, Cardiff kind of helped us along a bit, Guto. I mean, you get a booking early in the second half for Joe Rolls, and you're thinking, well, there's 4 or 5 players in the book already at this point, and there's all players, you've got to be careful. You don't want to be doing anything reckless or stupid. Give me a feeling, a bit of the Stephen McPhail's, if you can recall back, where you just thought, what an absolute idiot. Forget the fact that it was probably a red card challenge on its own, leaving the ref no choice but to send him off either way. But the fact is, he lost control of the ball, and it's not even as if he'd received the first yellow card, an hour earlier, and he slipped his mind. He'd had it, a matter of minutes earlier, and he's gone in way over the top. He's caught Corey Smith on his shin. It's, for me, the letter of the law. He should have received a straight red. But what I got a lasting feeling from there wasn't, that's a nasty one. Oof, Corey Smith will be lucky to get up. I was almost feeling a fury for Cardiff, thinking, what an absolute fucking idiot. What an idiot.
And Rawls is one of the leaders in the team, really. I think he's quite possibly vice-captain. I'm not sure about that, though. But he's one of the kind of... He's quite possibly their longest-serving player. He's their kind of midfield leader. And for him to do that, I mean, in a derby like this, it just summed up everything that was wrong with Cardiff, really, because it came about because he couldn't get his first touch right, which was a running theme through the match for Cardiff. He lunges in very late, very dangerously. It should have been a red card. I mean, it's over the ankle. The studs are planted into Smith. Corey Smith is a bit lucky, really, that he hasn't sustained a nasty ankle injury as a result of that tackle. As soon as he made it, I was calling for a red card, and I'd forgotten the Rawls was actually on a yellow. But like I said, if you're on a yellow card, you don't lunge in like that. But the truth is, whether you're on a yellow or not, you do not lunge in the way he did there. It was so reckless. But as soon as that red card was shown, I was confident then that we were gonna see it out, because I mean Cardiff had offered so little beforehand, and they weren't, if they hadn't offered anything by that stage, they definitely weren't going to offer anything down to 10 men. So I was very, very confident by that point. And then, I mean, after that, then it just turned into an extremely one-sided game. I mean, people have said it was the most one-sided derby that they can remember. Up until the red card, I would disagree with that and say that last year's derby, which we won, was actually more one-sided. That for me was more of an outclassing than Saturday's match. But as soon as the red card came, I mean, it was like a training session at the end of the day. And I think the time has come to move on to discuss Lowe's second goal, because, I mean, that was the cherry on top. And that basically summed up the gulfing quality between the two teams, because that was a moment of sheer class, even when they were trying to kick him to stop him.
Yeah. Of all people, Harry Wilson as well, who tried to chop him down.
The least likely person to bring down.
Well, Cardiff City's rubbed off on him, hasn't it?
Possibly, yeah. But I mean, boys, what a goal to cap off the win.
What a goal, Steve says, Guto. I don't think you can find many complaints here. I mean, I said to my dad before the game that I think Jamal Lowe owes us a goal or two here today. I didn't actually really believe that he would come up with the both, but he's one of his the biggest criticism of him is the quality of his finishing. His work rate's never been questioned. And his ability has never been quite. It's his finishing, isn't it? Which is he gets into such good positions. He probably should be on 12 goals already this season, given the chances he's had. But cometh the hour, cometh the man, and Jamal Lowe picks it up as a bit of a ricochet off Andreu as the ball comes in, and he's taken it on. And despite Kyle Norton's best efforts to get himself slotted through on goal, there was a man absolutely brimming with confidence after breaking his long goal-scoring drought earlier on in the game, who's got nothing but eyes for the back of the net. And what a sumptuous finish. Absolutely delightful with the outside of his right foot, Steve. And it looked like at that point, anything that Jamal Lowe was going to touch was going to turn to gold, because he was brimming with confidence, wasn't he?
Yeah, he was. I mean, it was perfectly described by Wyndham Evans as ever, saying, "What a pass from Andrew to put Jamal in." But, yeah, good old Wyndham. Well, for Lowe, I mean, the goal at the start must have been huge because, as you say, I mean, he hadn't scored for a while. He's missed chances, and you just couldn't see him doing what he did for the second goal if he hadn't got that first one. Obviously, he's probably had a little bit of luck in it because their goalkeeper had a shocker with the first. But, I mean, obviously, he's taken the ball, he's run with it. I'm thinking, well, you've got to pass it here, really, because I still didn't really fancy him to probably score from where he was. Most certainly didn't fancy him to score in the way that he did. But, yeah, the finish is just sublime, isn't it? It's one of the great derby goals, I suppose. It's going to get played over and over again, probably when we play them when the compilations come out, isn't it? So, I am pleased for him because I think he's definitely not someone that's, he's been working hard and everything like that. It's just that the finishing had let him down. And he did look low on confidence, but he must be feeling on top of the world right now. And, he's the hero, isn't he? That's the only way of describing it. If you're ever going to make a name for yourself, I mean, think of someone like Marvin Emnes, who initially only played 4 games for us, but he's in folklore because
Ben Wilmot on his debut,
Yeah, Ben Wilmot, of course. Yeah, he must have only played about 25 games for us, but he's left a big mark here, isn't he? I mean, that's the day to do it. I mean, no one's thinking now about Jamal Lowe, the Norwich game where he's missed 2 chances we could have won. Everyone's thinking Jamal Lowe, what a man. He's done a job for us in a derby match, and it's just a shame really that he can't get the hero's recognition from the fans in person at the moment. But yeah, I mean, it was what a goal it was, and it was a very relaxing last 20 minutes or so after that, wasn't it? Which does not happen very often in derby matches, but we will take it.
It was a disgrace to the derby tag, really, wasn't it, that it was so comfortable. There's been talk in Cardiff City's fan base from checking social media and forums that there is an inferiority complex in Cardiff when it comes to the derby games, that they feel that history, recent history in particular, doesn't favour them in the sense that they never seem to really get up to the levels of passion, enthusiasm, desire, drive that the Swansea counterparts do. And as a result of that, there is a sense, and the words used were inferiority complex, almost that they can't do it. They don't feel like they can match our determination. And so they've lost that game, almost like boxers can win fights in the pre-match talk before a punch is thrown. And this Swansea's Cardiff derby is almost won before a ball is kicked, because they just do not match our levels of intensity, desire, passion, and belief.
No, I saw somebody say that basically it's in the DNA, and it's interesting to hear them say that. It's something actually that we've, I think, spoken about for years as well. But I think it's definitely a widely held view in Cardiff now that the derby is a real problem for them because they simply do not turn up for it. But it. I'll be honest, it's got me thinking, to what extent is a Cardiff not turning up compared to actually not being good enough, and them not being actually set up to do well against us? Because I'm looking at the starting lineups yesterday and tactically how they matched up more than anything else. I'm thinking it was always set up in Swansea's favour. The Cardiff trying to play 4-4-2 against our side. The fact that their attacks rely so heavily on crosses into the big men, the box and set pieces, etc. And we haven't conceded a headed goal this season. We haven't conceded from a cross apart from crosses along the ground this season. We've got one of the best set piece records when it comes to defending them. There were things there that were set up really in our favour. Their defence is particularly immobile. I'm amazed, actually. I think Morrison and Nelson have started every single game this season, which is very surprising considering, that they're not, I guess, the most mobile, and you would have thought that they would tire after a while. But there were a couple of things that just set the game up nicely for Swansea against Cardiff. And it does tend to be the case, actually, that the Swans are better suited to playing against Cardiff than Cardiff are to playing against Swansea. When you add then the kind of psychological thing that, I don't think anybody in that Cardiff lineup has ever got a win against Swansea playing for Cardiff. It's 4 games in a row now that they've failed to get a win. They've lost 3 of them, going back to our Premier League days. Yeah, I mean, there's definitely a psychological issue there, and there are reasons going back all the way to Dave Jones's time that they struggle to get themselves up for derbies. But I'm also wondering how much of it is just down to quality, and the fact that we've got a deeper squad, we've got a more flexible squad, and I think we've probably got a better squad. They've got some, effective individuals that you can build a tactic around, but as an all-round team, I think we're better than them on the whole.
Yeah, sorry, it was interesting you say that, because it is very much my viewpoint, particularly more prominent after the Joe Roden saga, that I felt that the business, despite the travesty of the transfer fee, the business carried out off the back of that left us with a far more balanced squad than we had last season, a far stronger squad than we had last season. And for all Cooper's criticisms, and I was front of the line giving them out about his lack of subs used last season, you could argue, and there has been that argument, you look at the bench and you say, well, okay, who are you going to bring on to change the game? Who's the match with, and now you're looking at it, Guto, and you're thinking, well, actually, that squad is beefed up with quality. You've got players like Dander and Palmer who didn't get on the pitch. If we needed moment of inspiration, you've got players there who could have provided it.
At half-time, I mean, there were a few concerns about Ryan Bennett. He was nursing a hamstring injury. He was, on a yellow card, and some people argued, lucky to stay on the pitch, although apparently there is a new rule that says the referee made the right decision there without any doubt, which is a bit strange, but there we go. But I was thinking, okay, let's just take off Bennett and bring on Cabango. But it's that simple. Let's take off one of our best defenders and bring on another fantastic defender in his place. We had those options. And you look at Cardiff's bench and you're thinking, well, if they want to change things, who can they bring on? They can bring on Glatzel, but that doesn't really change the formation or the tactic that much. And then you look at their other attacking options, somebody like Murphy, who is more cold than hot. I think it's fair to say, capable of the odd moment of magic, but generally flat as to deceive. Gavin White, who's not really the most he's a pretty basic footballer. I would have said he's quite fast, direct runner, but nothing special. And that was about it when it came to their attacking options. And if they'd wanted to see out the game defensively, yeah, again, not too many options. Marlon Pack, if you wanted to beef up the midfield, but Sol Bamba is another defensive option. But the quality on that bench does not compare to the quality on Swansea's bench, where you've got Ryan Manning, an Irish international. You've got somebody like Dander, who's really come on leaps and bounds. Palmer, who is an established championship number 10 by now. Cabango, who is one of the best young defenders in this league. Latibaudiere, who had been fantastic against Bournemouth. And again, you're just comparing squads like for like. And you're thinking, forget about sort of tactics, forget about the psychology. I think it's fair to say that the quality of the of the squads is a mismatch on the whole, and
Yeah.
there is this widely held belief, I think, in Cardiff, and I think I've I last season I was looking at Cardiff and thinking, oh, do you know what? They've got a squad that's capable of going back up the Premier League. But by now, I think, do you know what? This squad isn't as good as people have made it out to be. It's not as good as I thought it was last season. It's not as good as some Cardiff-based journalists claim it is. And I think, that there's more to this victory than just Swansea wanting it more. I think there's that's combined with just a gulf in quality by now.
You're using the term journalist very loosely there, Guto.
I'm not referring to anybody specifically. Come on,
I know. They look, you obviously. I think recruitment's a massive issue there at Cardiff. Not that it should be a problem for Swansea to consider.
Just going. Sorry, I'm talking loads here, but it's worth pointing out that they still had some good, effective players on the pitch yesterday. The likes. I mean, Harry Wilson, we've spoken about it, was invisible, and from a Welsh point of view, you have to worry about his form at Cardiff and whether he suits that club, which he quite clearly doesn't. But the way he was played yesterday was totally unsuited to his skill set. But he's capable of much better than what we saw. Kiefer Moore is a very effective striker on his day, but just wasn't in the game yesterday. And these players, the good players that they do have, probably aren't being used to their full potential because of the system that they're being used in.
He's not a terrible footballer, Kiefer Moore, but this is a team that is incessantly direct and just wants to put the ball bang, bang, bang up on your head, flick it on, try and get a bounce of the ball. And when, as you analysed early doors, or it may have been pre-podcast chat, this is a team that is reliant on balls down the wing, crosses into the box, set pieces into the box, and when you're coming up against, well, the best defence in the division, it's factual, most clean sheets and fewest goals conceded, you're going to have trouble if your Route 1 plan is met with an absolute brick wall at the back. I can't remember whether it was Alex Ferguson or one of the Man United legends that once said that attacks win you games, but defence win you titles. And that's the difference, in that you keep clean sheets, only draw or win games. I mean, it sounds really basic, but the way our defence is set up completely nullified Cardiff. They would look hopeless. Steve, bring you back in. It's been a little while since we've heard your voice. It took so long for Cardiff to realise that they were getting completely dominated in the middle, and it took them until they were down to 10 men and 2-0 down, but they then substituted off Mark Harris for Marlon Pack to give them the extra body in the middle. It was missing Joe Rawls. It was very, very mismatched, and from the first 10 minutes you could have seen I'm not a big fan generally of the Smith, Fulton, Grimes midfield, I've said before, but having those three in there proved effective, completely overrun Cardiff, and it just allowed us to put a stamp on the game. They didn't get a sniff.
Well, to be honest, I didn't really want us to play with those three in the middle, but when you score as early as we did, it's sort of set up perfectly then, isn't it? Because you don't have to go for it massively. So, as you say, they did nullify the threat there. Whether it would have worked so well if we didn't score so early, then that is open to debate, I suppose. But the fact is we did score early, so then it sort of played into our hands wonderfully. I mean, obviously 4-4-2 gets, there's not many teams that sort of play it these days, is there? I mean, you look at Leicester won the league with it, didn't they? They sort of bucked the trend. But, I mean, a lot of sides now do play with three in the middle in some way, shape or form. I mean, you might play with, you've got the 4-3-3, haven't you? 4-2-3-1, what we're playing now with, sort of 5-3-2. And it's difficult for sides now that are playing 4-4-2, I would say. I mean, Cardiff did the same thing last season, didn't they? Had the liberty and played with a 4-4-2. And again, it didn't really work, did it? So, I mean, that probably didn't help them, I would say. I think Neil Harris did say that after the game, didn't he? Would have gone about it differently. But, I mean, we've sort of played, with three in the middle for years, haven't we? And you've got to wonder if that might be one of the reasons why we have tended to do better against them. I mean, it's just the way that teams play these days, isn't it? They like to flood the midfield and to dominate possession, and it does make it more difficult then if you're outnumbered by 3-2. And that probably didn't do Cardiff any favours, did it? But I mean, the truth is they can't say any of their players, especially, did a good job yesterday, did they really? I mean, Smithies made the mistake for the first goal, and it sort of set the tone for him. So my heart bleeds, should we say?
I'll address the elephant in the room for the purposes of impartiality, Guto. Ryan Bennett in the first half. I think if I was supporting those out east, I'd be a little disappointed he didn't, putting it mildly, he didn't receive his marching orders for what looked like a second yellow. But now, I've heard conflicting reports. You mentioned briefly earlier on, I would be very sceptical looking at this again if I supported them, that this could possibly be the case. But apparently the ref did get it spot on.
Apparently, it's a very weird rule, and you have to question why it was brought in. But apparently, if you are, if a yellow card, a challenge worthy of a yellow card is committed in the sense that he's trying to impede an attacker mid-attack, and if the referee has played advantage and the attacker has managed to get a good opportunity then out of that, then the referee does not show a yellow card, which to me sounds mad. I mean, who came up with that rule? Why they thought that rule was necessary, I don't know. But apparently that seems to be the rule. I've not seen it used before. It's obscure, to say the least. And if I was a Cardiff fan, I would still be pretty angry. What impact it would have had in the game, I guess we'll never know. It was the one thing in the entire game that Cardiff could feel aggrieved about. But yeah, I think it, if there was any justice, I think Ryan Bennett really should have had a second yellow for that. And I wouldn't have been complaining even after hearing that rule if he had been sent off.
It's a difficult one because what has actually happened is he stayed on his feet. And you're thinking, well, he's getting a shot away here. As soon as the ref pulls it back, I'm peering through my fingers because I'm thinking, well, he's taking him out when he's getting a shot away on goal, and yes, he's got a shot away. But if the ref pulls it back, you're worrying, aren't you? I'll read it out to you, Steve. It's been brought in for this season, just thankfully, under Law 12, fouls and misconduct. If the referee plays advantage or allows a quick free kick for an offence which interfered with or stopped the promising attack, the yellow card is not issued. So by the virtue of staying on his feet, Kiefer Moore has effectively kept Ryan Bennett on the pitch, which is probably going to leave a bit of a sour taste in his mouth. But it's definitely one of those obscure ones. And as Guto said, you'd think in the laws of the game would certainly see that as a blatant. It's no attempt of the ball really. He stuck his leg out, hovered it there, and just left it there for the player to trip over. But the laws are there, and they're there for a reason. And whether they've been adapted for any specific intention in mind, but the referees obviously read up on them. And how often have we said this season about the level of the quality of the refereeing in the Championship? But in this instance, he's spot on. Credit to him.
Yeah, the ref does deserve credit, really, because I certainly thought he was going to get sent off. And then obviously the longer it went, you're thinking, we might just get away with this one here. And obviously he didn't get a red. And but yeah, when you see that afterwards then about that rule, you sort of understand why. Interestingly, I still think we may have been a little bit lucky there, because should we have taken him off? That's what I was thinking. Obviously it doesn't matter now, but I mean, I was thinking half time, he literally now, if he does one little thing, he's off. And obviously it didn't happen, so it's great. But can you imagine he had been sent off and it had cost us the game? I think the knives would have probably been out for Cooper. So by keeping him on was a little bit of a gamble, really, wasn't it? Obviously it's paid off, so that's great. But I think maybe we should have taken him off, if I'm being honest, because that could have been a very risky. We could have put ourselves on the back foot needless. He was walking an incredible tightrope after that, Bennett.
I found it even more peculiar after the Joe Rolls red card, Gitto, because I thought, you know how referees like to even these up, and I thought it would be something completely innocuous, a challenged header where someone goes down, and you just know the referee is going to love the opportunity to just balance it up 10v10, just so that any doubts over the earlier one or whether or not Bennett should have gone in the first half would have been brushed away by. And I just thought, right, as soon as Joe Rolls gets sent off, the first thing that should happen is a Swansea substitute board go up. We've seen it happen. I think it was it Pochettino down the Liberty? I think
Davidson Sanchez, wasn't it?
Sanchez, yeah, it was a blatant second yellow card, and the referee shit out of it, and then straight away, Pochettino knew he'd got away with one, and within a minute he'd subbed him off. He knew exactly what was happening. Everyone in the stadium could see what was happening, and yes, I do agree with you, Steve. I do think we should have perhaps subbed him anyway. Cooper has got away with one there, in fairness, but it's interesting reading on about the laws, and Gitto, bring us back to you again. Rules dealing specifically with playing advantage state advantage should not be applied in situations involving serious foul play. Well, it wasn't that. Violent conduct or a second cautionable offence, unless there is a clear opportunity to score a goal. So if he plays the advantage, he can't send him off. If it's a second cautionable offence, he shouldn't play advantage, but he's obviously deemed the original opportunity as a clear opportunity to score, which is why he's played it. So does that make it any clearer to you?
I mean, how do you define a clear, goal scoring opportunity? I guess in that kind of situation, Kiefer Moore was on the edge of the area and Mark Gay was in front of him,
and it was blocked from point blank range, wasn't it?
Blocked before he could get to the goal. So how clear an opportunity is that really? So yeah, it's an obscure rule. I absolutely have no idea why it was brought in, why they felt the need for that rule. I mean, that's what football really needed, isn't it? That specific rule. I mean, that's what we've been calling out for years.
Yeah.
It's just a weird one as far as I'm concerned, and if I was a Cardiff City fan at that time watching it, and thank God I wasn't yesterday, then yeah, I would still feel a bit miffed and feel like justice was not served in letting Ryan Bennett stay on, but he did, and it helped us see out a very, very enjoyable win.
What is it, Steve, about the derby? You hear the players pre-match from both sets of teams that come out and say, we're up for this, we're going to do it for the fans, we know how much it means, yada yada. But you watch the players on the pitch then, and it's almost as if Swansea being played like hardcore punk rock music in the dressing before a game, and Cardiff have been playing some melancholic, sad little opera music with just completely dulls the life out of them, because I just feel like they come on the pitch and it's two completely different characters. And Gitto mentioned earlier about the quality, and it's a rare thing to see in a football team, I suppose, that if you can have a balance between having the match winners, the quality, and your workhorses, and the workhorses help give the ball to the match winners. But in one player, in Andre Ayew, Swans have the luxury of both, don't they? He is clearly one of, if not the best player in this division. He's certainly in the top three without question. Yet he works as hard as anyone else in the division as well. So he gets it as well. You know how much he feels, and he loves beating them down the road. You can see it in the way he plays the game. It's a rare thing, isn't it? But Swans have the quality, as Gitto said. The squad, this first starting 11, it's just better than Cardiff. The recruitment's been better. The Swans have a better team and do have a better chance of promotion than Cardiff, no matter what the national publications will tell you. That said, the grit and determination is there in abundance as well. It's not just quality, is it?
No, it's not. That's the thing with us. We are very difficult to score against, aren't we? So when we did go in front yesterday, much as I know there was always that worry they can come back and this type of thing, but I was thinking we are going to be really hard to beat now, because not many teams have scored 2 goals against us. So that is such a strong thing to have in your locker. I mean, you said earlier about the thing with defenses win titles, attackers win you games, and you can't really argue with it. And that is the thing with us. I mean, like you say, with AU, he works his socks off, and he didn't really have too many great chances to score or anything yesterday, but he was still influential with us. I mean, we're just very lucky, I suppose, that down the years, our players, our manager, etc., whoever it is, they always seem to get this fixture, don't they? Whereas it doesn't seem to be the same on the other side. The media probably don't do us any harm in that sense, because there are certain people, one who springs to mind straight away, who always looks down their nose at us, and by doing that, I think it probably gets to the players as well in some ways. They probably see all this thing, Cardiff this, Cardiff that, and maybe it just doesn't do us any harm, and it certainly doesn't do me any harm. The best thing from my point of view always is if Cardiff just start to talk, because every time they do, it tends to backfire. So we can't complain really. But I was working it out earlier. Our record in this fixture since 2008 is now 12 games, 6 wins, 3 draws, 3 losses. Now we've got to be pretty happy with that, to say the least. I mean, we have now won twice as many games as them in that period. That's pretty satisfying, isn't it?
I think there's a difference in the way that both teams see each other. I think I may be wrong here, but as a Swansea fan, I've always thought of us as kind of a reasonably small club that overachieves, really, and that's what gives me pride and joy, is the fact that we've accomplished things in our recent history which we should never have been able to do, really, and we are a club that's proud of its ability to punch above its weight. And that's part of our identity, I think. Whereas Cardiff's identity centres around this idea that they are a big club, that really should be bigger than what they are, and should be better than what they are. I think they've got this idea that they are the big club in the making, and that they have this rightful place that they need to get to. And when you bring those two mentalities then into the derby, you've got one side that almost thinks that, well, there's a superiority there in some senses. Cardiff fans will always think that they are the bigger club and the better club, whereas Swansea fans, I think we do sometimes think of ourselves as the kind of the underdog at times, even when we've got bigger players, when we've got better players, and we're doing better in the league, etc. I still think there is some part of us that thinks, we're the second city, kind of scrapping against the kind of the cocky ones from the capital. That's probably not true, because Swansea fans are every bit as cocky, if not cockier, than Cardiff fans these days. But there is an element of that in there that feeds into it as well. So Cardiff always feel like the favourites going into these matches, and the club that theoretically should win these matches, even though often they aren't.
I will say, I see exactly where you're going with that. I do feel this is very media driven. You can see exactly where Steve brings it up, in that you've got the publications which are all centered around Cardiff. Even look at what's come after the fallout of the derby. It's not how Swansea won it, it's how Cardiff lost it. You see that it'll be fed back to the players, and you can see how the players are up for it. I absolutely agree with that, and I think it reminds me a lot, gents, of the England national team, where the media have this superiority complex, think that they are the be all and end all. In this case, Cardiff are the be all and end all of Wales, and it goes beyond football. Of course, you can look at the Welsh Assembly and the Welsh government, and how much funding gets ploughed into the capital compared to everywhere else in Wales, and it's a societal thing. And I think where your point comes into it, Guto, as well, is it does leave a bitter taste over, well, in society generally. I think in that, and Cardiff have this everything given to them, this increased funding every time a building goes more than 5 years old. It gets a facelift, whereas Swansea's rot into the ground, and no one's bothered. So you can see that in society generally as well. And I think from that perspective, it does help, because you just need to read any publication. You just need to switch on the evening news at 6 o'clock, and you'll hear about Cardiff. And in other news, Swansea won a big game, and this was the score. And you just look at that and you go, oh, this is meant to be impartial. This is meant to be. This is what I'm paying my license fee for. You know what I mean? You're looking at it and you're thinking it's not right, it's not fair, but it does help when it comes to these sorts of things. And I think when it comes down to the crunch, then the players are like, you know what? These people, yeah, they've given you no chance. They've not spoken about you. They've misspelt your name in that paper. You know, they're not even bothered mentioning about you, but it's Cardiff, 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 Cardiff. Even since the game, as I say, even since the game, it's how Cardiff lost it, how Neil Harris got it wrong. I haven't seen anything yet about how Steve Cooper got it right. And we've got to give him great credit, Steve, because we talked about maybe whether the midfield three would have worked as well had we not got the early goal. And we could talk if, buts and maybes for the rest of the evening. But the fact of the matter is that was a complete domination, and Cooper managed that derby superbly.
Yeah, he did. Obviously, his record in the derby, you have to say, is pretty good now as well, with 2 wins and a draw. Obviously, in the Guto had said earlier, really, the home win last season was more dominant. Really, I mean, they barely had a kick. It was like a hammering of a 1-0. Really, it should have been far more. But yeah, Cooper does seem to maybe grasp this fixture, doesn't he? And he's, like I say, he set us up well. There was a clear plan, and with us scoring early, it just worked perfectly then because we had the more cautious midfielder and the fact we're not conceding goals. It was always going to be very difficult to break us down. So. Yeah, he does deserve a lot of credit, even though I've said maybe he should have taken Bennett off, but he didn't and it worked. So there's no complaints there. Yeah, and like I said, Jamal Lowe, arguably, would we have even started him? If you think about it, would we have been thinking maybe somebody else should have had a go? Because he hasn't impressed that much lately, but stuck faith with him, and obviously it paid off. So all of his decisions really paid off. So for him, a great day.
Yeah, and he has stuck with Jamal Lowe, hasn't he, Guto? I mean, he's spoken on several occasions before about Jamal Lowe, and questions have been put to him. You know, he's a winger being asked to play a striker's role, and not every winger being asked to turn into a striker is going to turn out like Thierry Henry, are they? But that said, those finishes, that second finish is something Henry would have been proud of yesterday, and he's put a lot of faith in him, and he's stuck with him when others wouldn't have.
Yeah, because I think the question has started to be asked, should Lowe be dropped just because he isn't supplying the goals? I mean, like Steve said earlier, his work rate's been fantastic throughout, and I do think he contributes a heck of a lot to this side, and he enables us to keep the ball and he improves our build-up definitely by his presence in the team. So even though he's not scoring goals, I think he's still contributing a lot, which makes it easier to justify keeping him in the team. He's not just a goal scorer who's not finding the back of the net. He is more than that. And even though he's not scoring, he is still contributing. But I mean, it is a vindication of keeping Lowe in the team. The fact that he could get 2 goals in such a massive game, and Cooper will be hoping that, of course, boosts his confidence in front of goal and he'll start netting a bit more regularly from now on. But I thought Cooper got his tactics really spot on, really. I mean, the formation was never going to change, I guess, apart from the question of who is playing in midfield, whether we go for an out-and-out defensive midfield 3 or stick a number 10 in there. Pre-match, I would have said, put Casey Palmer in there to get a physical attacking presence in midfield. He didn't do it, but the midfield really stepped up to the plate and dominated and helped us win the game. And you can't really argue with the results. So even though it's not something I'd want to see every single game, it definitely worked against Cardiff. And yeah, he's Cooper's taken a lot of stick in his time at Swansea last season. There were definitely times when it didn't look like things were going really right and couldn't really see what he wanted to do with this team. But he has found a way of making us effective, of getting us playing to our full capacity, and he's made us promotion candidates. And this season, I don't think anybody can really criticise what Cooper's doing. I think he's doing a fantastic job.
It does boggle me, and I see people saying, I'd like us to get back to 4-3-3, and I'm thinking, or 4-5-1 rather, and I'm just thinking, we've seen that.
Yep.
You know, okay, that was what we used to do, and we used to do it very effectively. But we also did that for the first 5 months of last season, and we all remember how boring and ineffective it was. We didn't have, obviously, we'd lost Dan James and Ollie McBurney, and we didn't have the players to play that game effectively. Connor Roberts had his worst 5 months in a Swansea shirt. Jake Bidwell looked like an absolute travesty of a signing from QPR, the most un-Swansea-like signing ever. And now you've given them to the license to do what they want to do, which is get up and provide some attacking width. And it just fits us, because what we were struggling with the first half of last season effectively was movement. Every time we got the ball, we looked like there was no movement. There was just slow, ponderous, sideways, backwards, because there were no options. Big critic of Matt Grimes myself last season, and it was because and it's been pointed out to me, his lack of spatial awareness, or his lack of, spraying the ball out left, right, and centre like he was doing the year before, is because there's no movement there. There's no one actually making those runs. Now, with Roberts and Bidwell, the only players who are hugging a touchdown, they're forced to get up there, and they're forced to get up on the side. Look at the goal. Bidwell crosses it in. Connor Roberts heads it back across the goal. How many times have we seen that this season and the tail end of last season? They're effectively providing us with another two attackers when we go up the pitch. It's just, it does boggle my mind that that there is still a call to return to an old formation when we've got one that clearly is the best suited for the personnel we've got. And I'll give Cooper credit on the other point, Steve, in that I would have liked him to play Palmer in the midfield. I thought he would have added the strength, the beef, and also the attacking threat as well. But in having him on the bench, maybe he was thinking, I've got an option. Maybe we'll keep it tight. Maybe we'll try to not get overrun by a Cardiff team brimming with confidence, coming off 4 wins on the bounce. We just make sure that we don't get 2 or 3-0 down early doors and then really end up against it, and then see where we are. And then Palmer's always an option off the bench. Fresh legs come on, start imposing himself on the game. Who knows? We would have likely seen him or Danda, more likely Palmer, I'd have thought, but one or the other if we needed to. And the simple fact is, the way the game went, we didn't.
Yeah, it would have been interesting to know what the plan was in that sense, because obviously, if one of the midfield three was going to go off, then there wasn't another similar type of player to bring on. So a more attacking player would have had to have come on, really, or it would have meant a change in formation. So, yeah, it is an interesting one. I probably would have started. Well, I definitely would have started with Palmer and probably not played Smith. But as I said earlier, really, it just worked out perfectly because we got that early goal. I mean, if we hadn't, it's difficult to really say what Cooper would have done. Obviously, he was quite cautious in the same fixture last year. He didn't make a sub at all. We didn't really push on, even though a lot of people felt it was there for the taking. So, like I said, all his big decisions worked perfectly, and the fact we scored early then was like a dream scenario. So, it's what he would have done otherwise. It's hard to say, but it doesn't really matter now, does it? But I think it definitely would have been Palmer that I would have picked him. Me and Guto were talking about it last week. I think this wasn't really a game for Danda. You could have seen him getting muscled off the ball, really. So, the fact that he didn't play was definitely a positive, because I don't think he would have had the type of impact that we were looking for. Nothing personal to him, but it's just not the fixture that you would choose to start him in. I just don't think he'd be as effective as he's been in previous games.
Yeah, I can see that. I can definitely see where maybe, but we've said that about Danda before as well, haven't we? We said that perhaps, he's a bit lightweight or whatever, but then he's come into games where you think he's definitely not going to be useful in this one. He's had absolutely brilliant performance. Was it Stoke 5 or 6 weeks ago? I can't remember. He run the show. Perhaps should have got a couple of goals in that one, but you just never know. He's certainly come on leaps and bounds this season. And it is going back to what we said earlier on, really, where it does add a great depth to the team and giving us options if we need them, which is a lovely problem for Steve Cooper to have, and perhaps something he's not always had since he's been at the club. But it was an absolute brilliant result, and take nothing away. Where it leaves Swansea is on the wider scale. Is it did push us up into the automatics. We've now come down after the afternoon games were played, but only to third, which puts us in such a strong position still. 4 points off top, 1 point off Bournemouth in second, and really leaves us in a fantastic position. Going into the Christmas fixtures now, which normally would be the most hectic time of the year, Guto, but there isn't really a time when there isn't a hectic time of the year this season, is there? So it's pretty much par for the course and the norm now for the Swans. And we should look ahead really to what's coming up. And first of all, as we talk here, we've got a game in a few days' time. Let's hope it's not after the Lord Mayor show, as we've seen sometimes after a derby result. But it is a game that Swansea will consider very winnable. It'll be a bit of a pickup in form since sacking Philip Koku, but Derby County away from a derby to derby, Guto, is. It's still points on the board that Swansea could target and think that you should be, if you're serious about automatic promotion, as we said before, Derby County in their current predicament is one of those games you could target.
From one derby to another, I'd love to see us build on the Cardiff City result and go to Derby and put in a similarly commanding performance. Really, Derby are probably not quite the same team that they were a couple of weeks back when Philip Koku was in charge. Since Wayne Rooney shifted from the pitch to the dugout, they've not lost any games. They've only won one of them, and that was against a very poor Millwall team. So it's not been a total transformation. But you look at the results: 1-1 against Wickham, 1-1 against Coventry, 1-0 against Millwall, 0-0 against Brentford, 0-0 against Stoke. That suggests that they have solidified at the back. Still a bit of an issue scoring, but they're not losing games in the same way as they have done for most of the season. They lost 3-0 away at Middlesbrough, which was a real hammer blow for them, I think, and really hit home that things needed to change. And it seems like they've started to sort that out. I think there are a lot of problems at that club right now. It's not the squad is the weakest there's been for a long time. Obviously, there's been talk of this takeover, which seems to have distracted everybody. They've still not made a permanent decision over a manager. Finances have been a little bit questionable over the last few years. So it's not, on the face of it, a club that's in a great place, although they're probably in a better place now than they were not that long ago.
It is. It's a strange one, isn't it? Because they have got a new setup in the dugout, Steve. With as Guto said, Wayne Rooney not hanging up his boots so much, but concentrating more on the managerial side. But in that respect, they've shored things up, and perhaps will be a slightly different prospect. That said, he hasn't come in all guns blazing and started tearing up the form book. They've just made steady improvements, and is it fair to say in that regard it's still not still far from the finished article from Derby's perspective, and something that Swansea should still be going there full of confidence?
Well, we should definitely be going there full of confidence after the weekend, but it probably isn't when I said this about Cardiff, it's probably not the best time to have Derby. We would rather have had them about a month ago, but the fact is that they are a team that struggled. I think they've mainly struggled with scoring goals. They haven't scored many at all. I mean, there was a point earlier in the season where they really hadn't scored many. But they are, I think there are still some reasonable players there. Obviously, the fact that Rooney himself isn't going to play is probably a help. Obviously, he's not as good as he once was, but you'd still think that he'd be able to more than hold his own in a team like that. But the fact that he's in charge now, I think that was fairly likely to happen, that he was probably going to be their next manager, and it wouldn't surprise me at all if he ends up being their next permanent boss. But I think it is a surprise really that Derby have struggled as much as they did. I mean, they were a reasonable side last year. I mean, they did have a sniff of the playoffs later on in the season, but I wouldn't have expected them to have been as bad as they have been really. But like I said, they seem to have started to improve. So it's not going to be an easy game. I mean, our record there isn't the best in general. I think I can only remember that one win. I think it was the game where Pintado snapped Robbie Savage, which is always an enjoyable thing to mention. But but like I say, we should be going there full of confidence, at least. Hoping that we can come away with something.
8 goals in 18 games, Guto. I'm sure you're aware. It's a problem for them.
Yeah, I think they're the lowest scorers in the division by
they are.
by 2 goals against Sheffield Wednesday, and they've only scored 4 goals from open play. So it tells you everything. Apparently, what's his name? Colin Kazim Richards has been playing well for them recently, and has been a big part of their kind of slight turnaround in form. He seems to have given them a bit of a focal point to attack, because I do think that's been an issue for them, really, that lack of striking talent. He's just given them a little bit of presence up front, and that seems to have made a difference. But yeah, the team's just been. I mean, weirdly, they're a team that can keep hold of the ball well enough. I mean, they've got some decent footballers in there. A lot of youngsters who are technically pretty good. It's just that, then when you look at their defence, it's not the most convincing of defences, and up front they really do lack goals. So what's going on in the middle is okay. What's going on in defence and attack is problematic for them. But I don't think Derby are usually pushovers. Whoever plays against them, I think it's often the case that they'll give you a little bit of resistance, even if they don't really look like scoring a lot of the time, and it only takes 1 or 2 chances to score against them. But you will get a bit of resistance from them, and they're not your typical Championship team. They will try and keep the ball. They will try and pass it up the pitch. I'm not sure how much that's changed under Wayne Rooney, but I think the impression I get is that they've improved since he left the team as well. He's one of these players who is he had to be in the team because he's a big name, even though he probably didn't suit the team that well. He was dropping very deep, taking a lot of touches, not really having the kind of influence that you want of the game. I mean, at the end of the day, he's well past it, and by now I don't think he's anything more than an average Championship player. So I don't think he's any kind of great loss now that he's in the dugout, and it's possible that it's actually freed them up a little bit, having him off the pitch. I don't think it's going to be a pushover going against Derby, but the form that we're in at the moment, the way we've played this season, it's one that we should be targeting. A team struggling to stay up, we should be going there looking to win, shouldn't we?
Yeah, it's interesting what you say about Rooney. As I've thought that since he's gone there, really, it became the Wayne Rooney show, didn't it, at Derby? And after just after Frank Lampard's Derby County, it became Wayne Rooney's Derby County, which, in a sense, did take the focus or the attention away from any of the other players who may have been trying to shine there. And if you've seen him at all in the MLS, you see he became like a quarterback role where he just sat there in front of the defence almost and just started spraying balls 40, 50 yards out to wingers, which is great if you are an absolute dominant team that just have far superior players. But the Championship is a dogfight. It's one of the most competitive divisions in the world. And we know all too well about that. And it is, anyone can beat anyone. So you can't have a player there whose sole purpose is to just, as you say, he sits very deep, he picks the ball up, and he just tries to play these Hollywood passes. I do think it'll have benefited Derby that he's not on the pitch anymore. And the media, we talked about the media's influence earlier on in the podcast, and the media almost wouldn't have allowed Philip Corker to drop Wayne Rooney, because Wayne Rooney is bigger than Derby County in their eyes, and as preposterous as that seems. But it does feel like that balance might be better now that he's not there, and that focus and that attention can just be shifted to the 11 on the pitch. That said, Swansea go into it 3 wins in the last 5. It's a win-loss, win-draw, win. So it's not been it's been up and down, but I'm hoping we can follow it up with a second a back-to-back victory, Steve. What are your thoughts on how this one's going to go?
It's a difficult one. I don't know. There's always the danger, as you say. I mean, the after the Lord Mayor show thing with when you played the Derby game. I'm going to say 1-1.
Okay, yeah. Guto, what about you?
I'd like to think that the buzz from winning against Cardiff will spur them on, and they'll want to build on it, and we can get a 1-0 win. That's what I'd like to see happen.
Yeah, I feel like it would be, and take this at face value. I think it would be more significant if we were to follow it up with another win, because that would show that we're here. Do you know what I mean? Derby games are derby games. You have to take them out of the context of the season, and it's who can get themselves fired up most for the 90 minutes. We know historically we've managed to do that better than Cardiff, as we've analysed earlier on. When you put that then and you follow that up with another win, however it comes, that will feel not as satisfying. Of course, nothing will feel as satisfying, but in terms of statements to the division, that will stand out more in terms of how we intend to play this season out if we're able to follow it up with what we on paper looks like not a routine win, but we would be favourites going into it, no doubt. But it will say that we're able to put these results back to back, which other teams who get promoted have to do. So I'm going to stick the faith in the team as well. I'm going to say a 1-0 victory to the Swans, and hopefully as well it's one of the front two to keep up their confidence and scoring form. And we move on now to talk about the game following up from that, while I frantically search for it on my internet here. It's home to Barnsley on the 19th on the following Saturday. We won't give a score prediction for this yet, but we will have a quick chat about it. Steve, coming back to you again, this a slightly different proposition. Barnsley, who currently sit mid-table, but they've won the last two on the bounce. I don't know how the game will go between now and then, but this one a little bit perhaps, again, another one that we should be targeting, but not perhaps so much so as Derby. Would you still fancy us? I should think so.
Well, yeah, I mean, we'd like to think that would be a game that we win. I know Barnsley obviously have had an issue in terms of manager. Their manager left, I believe, to go to New York Red Bulls right at the start of the season. So they've appointed another manager. Now his name is Valerian Ismail. They do love an obscure manager that's worked abroad, is what I've noticed with Barnsley. But obviously it's worked reasonably well so far. So yeah, Barnsley, one of them, they're probably a little bit like we used to do. They seem to look outside the box for for their managers. But they've like you said, they're having a better season this year than they did last, because they are the type of club that can bounce between this division and the one below, obviously. So yeah, I think it's a game we've got to target to win if we want to go up. That's what I would say, really. I mean, it was the game with them last year was quite dour, wasn't it? It was a 0-0, I think, around Christmas time. Hopefully this one will be a bit better than that.
We said this a few weeks back, when we looked at the prospect of the Norwiches and Brentfords coming up, and we said, we've got a few games beforehand we can target, really going into those games full of spirit. This seems like another opportunity, doesn't it? Like, these games come in little packs where you think, well, Derby away and then Barnsley at home. If we can put two wins together there to follow on from the Cardiff win, we will be right up there going into Christmas, and really be looking at people taking us seriously for the top two.
Yeah, I think well, it's all well and good going out and beating Cardiff 2-0 in a big match in the Derby, but the sign of serious promotion contenders is that you can then follow that up and get the job done against the weaker sides in the division. Now, I'm not putting Barnsley in the same category as Derby. I think they're a much better team than Derby. They've got some good players. Like Steve said, they are a team that looks for players in unusual markets. They try to play football the right way. I think that could suit us because they will come to the Liberty looking to attack. They'll be looking to be expansive, to create chances. That should leave us some room to attack as well. And what you've seen over the last few months is after a really bad start to the season when they had their problems, they've settled down, but their wins have predominantly come against the poorer sides in the division, and their defeats have come against the stronger side. So they've just had 2 straight wins against Sheffield Wednesday, who are of course bottom of the table, and Wickham, who I think are second from bottom. But before that, they were hammered 4-0 by Bournemouth. They've beaten Birmingham, but they've lost to Brentford and Blackburn. The only team of note, really, that you can say are definitely one of the better sides in the division who they have beaten are Watford. So they're definitely capable of that. They've got some talented players, the likes of Collie Woodrow, Fisher. These players, there are some, they're an underrated team, Barnsley. And I think that they're a team who are possibly better than their league position suggests. So I definitely would not take them for granted. I think they'll come here and they'll give us a tough game, and it could be a difficult one for us because I think we've seen in the past where perhaps less sort of fashionable sides have come to the Liberty who try to play football, and our fans have almost been taken by surprise by that, expecting a team to sit back and park the bus, and when they come and try to challenge, suddenly it's a bit of a surprise. I think that happened a couple of weeks back with Luton, for example, who came and created chances and caused problems for us and gave us a tough match, and some fans were starting to question things then, and I can see it being a very similar game with Barnsley. I think they will have their chances to score, but likewise, I think they will give us chances to score. And it's just about being professional and being clinical like we were against Luton and just getting the job done against Barnsley, probably.
How hard is this team talk for Derby, Steve? I mean, you always say that the team talk for a derby, the Cardiff Swansea derby, it writes itself, really, doesn't it? As we discussed earlier on. But how to get the players back up to those sorts of levels so soon after, that's the challenge, isn't it? And I think these 2 games will show how effective Cooper manages that. And unlike Neil Harris at Cardiff, Cooper's not afraid to make 1, 2, 3 changes off the back of a victory if he feels the players need a bit of a break, or horses for courses, if you like, for different opposition. And maybe we're going to see that again for Derby County and Barnsley, in that we might well see the likes of Danda and Palmer utilised from the start in either or both of those games. So in essence, the question I'm asking is whether he's got his work cut out for him in trying to raise those sorts of levels again.
But I mean, he's got to try and convey, really, isn't he? That obviously each game is worth the same amount of points. Now, obviously, the Cardiff game is one that we do want to win above all the others. But you get 3 points for it in the same way you'll get 3 points for the game against Derby. So, I do think that a couple of changes wouldn't do any harm either. I mean, if you think about, we haven't really touched on it, but Bennett and Guay were obviously doubts, and they did both play. So maybe one of them could come out, for example, and Cabango get put back in, and then, like say, got the option of Palmer or Danda coming in. So there's options, aren't there? That's definitely the way to look at it. With this schedule now so relentless, as we keep saying, you just have to keep giving the squad some rotation, I think. So I definitely would be doing that this week. I mean, if the game yesterday would have taken it out of a few of the players, so it's definitely worth trying to rotate slightly, I would say, as it will be really on going forward, because just it is so relentless playing every midweek. I think next week is a week where there actually isn't a midweek, but then we're into Christmas, so there's a load of games there. So yeah, we've got to just, I think he needs to rotate and also try and convey that the same amount of points are up for grabs, although obviously getting that message across might not be as easy as it sounds.
Yeah, absolutely. And as I said, we will put a score prediction up for that after the Derby game for the Barnsley one. So I'm going to take a break from normal convention here and finish this podcast by asking Guto and Steve just to relive Jamal Lowe's second goal there. Guto, just run it through your head and vocalize it for us again.
It's just genius, isn't it? You know, IU picks up the ball, there's a lucky break, and then suddenly Lowe just bursts onto it, rides one challenge. Harry Wilson has a little swing, and I mean, rides that one too. Then that outrageous piece of skill to roll it and then shoot with the outsider's foot into bottom corner. Just, if anything, summed up the gulf in quality between the two sides on Saturday. That was it. It just sent a clear message about who rules the roost in this derby.
Absolutely brilliant words, Steve. Norton wanted it on the outside. I suppose we were all saying, play him in, play him in. Just an absolutely outstanding goal.
Jamal knew best, didn't he? Like I say, I definitely thought he should have passed it, but lovely run and audacious finish into the corner. Keeper no chance. Bragging rights are ours once again.
Oh, once again. God, come on, Cardiff. This is getting boring. Every time we seem never beat the Jacks. Never beat the Jacks. Fabulous result for the Swans. Great podcast. Thanks a lot, gents. From myself, Guto and Steve, we're going to leave you now with a bit of Bing Crosby. Thanks for listening. Bye-bye.
A white Christmas, just like the ones I used to know, where the treetops glisten and children listen to hear sleigh bells in the snow. I'm dreaming of a white Christmas, with every Christmas card I write. May your days be merry and bright, and may all your Christmases be white.